The title of our service today is Still Small Voice. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intriligator, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm so happy that you're here with us this morning. Welcome to worship with Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. To learn more about our church and our values, please visit our website at melroseuu.org. On our welcome page, you can find a link to our digital guest book. Ginger, who is our chat host this morning, will share a link in the chat box now to that page so you can find it easier. Feel free as you like to use the chat box as we go along to say hello and greet one another. And please do feel welcome to stay afterward for our virtual coffee hour. We have just a few announcements this morning before we get started, as we're getting ready for the holidays. Things are coming at us. First, let's hear from Mary Beth Griscom, who has a thank you. Mary Beth, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to report that this community came through big time to support our holiday giving tree. We set an ambitious goal and you, more than doubled it. All the funds we collected will go to the Urban Ministries' excellent program serving the people of Roxbury. Thank you so much for your generous donations to this very worthy cause.
Hooray. Thank you, Mary Beth. And thanks to everybody who donated. I know that there are many families out there who will have a better Christmas and a better Hanukkah because you contributed. Thank you so much. And let's see, we have another announcement. As you may know, it is our practice here to share half of what we gather in the collection plate every month with a different worthy cause. Here to introduce our Giving Beyond Our Walls partner for December is John Pastel. John?
Thank you, Reverend Suzanne. And hello, friends. I'm actually very pleased and proud to be able to present the Giving Beyond Our Walls recipient for December is going to be an organization called The Second Step. One of the reasons I'm so proud of this is that Margaret Gromenstein, whom you all know, is one of the co-founders of this organization. Back in the late 80s and the early 90s, she worked very hard with a group of friends to establish this shelter for victims of domestic violence. It provides a very important service to these victims. There's lots of shelters, I shouldn't say lots, but there are shelters where people can go when they're immediately under threat, but then they have to be released from there. Those are not long-term shelters. The Second Step shelter is a shelter for the remainder of the year where they get trained in all sorts of ways to earn a living, how to have better relationships, and it's providing a tremendous service. Over the past 20 plus years, their first client was in 92. They've expanded to a point where they're now serving over 500 people in the community. So in addition to the two residence shelters, they have many outpatient client programs as well. So it's amazing. I asked them for something that they would say, want you to know, and they say the need is great. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience domestic violence. Due to COVID-19, survivors of domestic violence are now experiencing increased risk of abuse, isolation, and difficulty escaping danger. Many are also experiencing loss of wages and the inability to meet their family's basic needs, including food, rent, and essential prescriptions. Unemployment, job loss, and economic hardship reality of domestic violence. As a result of COVID, these are increasing, and the field is seeing an uptick in calls. So please, they're grateful for anything we can do, and I urge you all to dig deep in your pockets and give generously. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you to Margaret for founding this really important organization. Thanks, John, for bringing it to our attention. Two other new things this week. Our worship committee is brainstorming new ideas for extending the conversations that start here in our worship service, conversations about our worship themes. So if you have feedback about today's service or thoughts that you'd like to share about it, you're welcome to join me and Rebecca Mooney, who's a member of our worship committee, in a talkback session this coming Wednesday at noon on Zoom. The link to that meeting is in your email news. Please join us. Also this Wednesday at 1 is a chance to get your photo taken. I'm collecting holiday photos from anyone and everyone in our church community so that I can share them in our Christmas Eve worship service, because we want to see your lovely faces and we want to see your beautiful holiday decorations. So please email me a Christmas selfie or a Hanukkah selfie, or bring a bauble or two to the Zoom meeting on Wednesday afternoon, and I will take a picture of you there. So you don't even have to do it, okay? I'd love to have a photo of everyone to share on Christmas Eve. Speaking of our holiday plans, I want to remind you that next Sunday is also a special service. We'll have a guest preacher. The Reverend Amy Beltane will be joining us live on Zoom from Portugal, where she lives. Amy is a practicing UU pagan, and she will lead us in an authentic winter solstice experience, so don't miss that. And then on Christmas Eve, December 24th, I will lead our traditional service on Zoom at 5 p.m. We'll have readings and carols plus special music. It will be lovely. Please have on hand a candle to light. Then at 7 p.m. that night, those who would like are welcome to join us in an outdoor, in-person, socially distanced gathering, weather permitting. We've got a permit to use one of the fields on Linfells Parkway across from the schools and next to the pond. We will gather there at a safe distance in order to gaze upon one another's lovely faces, sing some Christmas carols, and light candles in the darkness. Please bring your own candles there too, so we can maintain distance from one another. Then on the Sunday after Christmas, many of you know it's our tradition to skip worship and go for a walk in the woods. This year, instead, we invite you to walk on your own or to go that morning to a different UU service online. We'll put some suggestions in the email news. And then after that, gather here at this link at 11:30 a.m. for our coffee hour that will be hosted by our church board. Now, that is all the announcements, and it is time to greet our neighbors. So this is when we change to gallery view and scroll through and see all those faces. Good morning, everybody. Hi there. Oh, lots of smiles today. I see lots of red. I see some poinsettias. I see some kids. Hey, what are you showing me? Does anybody have their special chalice that they made at home from the RE pack? Oh, I see it at the Tashoni house, the Noto family, and I see the Cordovana. Florence has one. That looks great. Lots of nice waves. Oh, I see Nancy has her holiday sweater on. Oh, and the Weinbergs have their homemade chalice too. That looks great. Good to see you guys. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to worship. Wonderful. Okay, now it's time for our Advent wreath. Today is the third Sunday of Advent. With so much that asks for our attention, the lighting of one candle after another reminds us that this season must pass in its own time. Birth cannot be rushed. We have the choice to be awakened and fully inhabit the present moment. The light of Advent grows brighter and brighter as we celebrate our coming together as a community. This morning, we light the third candle, which is a different color. Often in traditional Advent wreaths, the third Sunday of Advent is represented by a pink candle while the others are purple. We light this candle as a symbol of joy, not just any simple cheer, but as a special transcending joy that cannot be contained. Advent asks us to proclaim our gladness as a gift to the world, even when sorrow and uncertainty abound. May we share our hearts through our words, our music, and the way we live our lives. Let the fullness of our joy lead to more freedom. Throughout this season of Advent, after we light our wreath, we hear our choir sing us different versions, different verses of the traditional carol, O come, Emmanuel. Today we sing together verse 3. Please share that now, Josh.
Oh, come, new day, spring, come and cheer our spirits by your presence here, and down in every broken soul, as vision that can see the whole. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come within as light to dwell.
I call us to worship today with these words from the Irish poet and philosopher John O'Donoghue. When you take the time to draw on your listening imagination, you will begin to hear this gentle voice at the heart of your life. It is deeper and surer than all the other voices of disappointment, unease, self-criticism, and bleakness. All holiness is about learning to hear the voice of your own soul. It is always there, and the more deeply you learn to listen, the greater surprises and discoveries that will unfold. And now, along with UUs everywhere, I will light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Giving our chalice lighting reading this morning is Josh Shortledge, who is representing the committee council and is also serving this year as the chair of our anti-racism ministry team. Go ahead, Josh.
Reverend Barbara Stevens is a UU hospital chaplain in Oregon. Here are her chalice lighting words. Let this be a place of warm and gentle silence, the silence that soothes and comforts the wounded, the silence that yields insights into heart and soul, the silence that calms, the silence that listens, the silence that speaks, the silence that renews. Let this be a place of warm and gentle silence.
Thank you, Josh. And now for this special Christmas time, we have a special Christmas carol, a bit of silly humor for you, a pandemic parody to poke fun at our current predicament. Thank you, choir.
Kings are 6 feet apart, will be around before
On this day giving place.
Yes, we have had plenty 2020. Let's hoping it's over soon enough. And now let us join together for the words of our covenant, followed by the song of aspiration. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. And now it's time for our story. Please gather around the device for a message from Katie.
Our story this morning is Snowflake Bentley, written by Jacqueline Briggs Martin and illustrated by Mary Azarian. In the days when farmers worked with ox and sled and cut the dark with lantern light, there lived a boy who loved snow more than anything else in the world. Willie Bentley's happiest days were snowstorm days. He watched snowflakes fall on his mittens, on the dried grass of Vermont farm fields, on the dark metal handle of the barn door. He said snow was as beautiful as butterflies or apple blossoms. He could net butterflies and show them to his older brother Charlie. He could pick apple blossoms and take them to his mother, but he could not share snowflakes because he could not save them. When his mother gave him an old microscope, he used it to look at flowers, raindrops, and blades of grass. Best of all, he used it to look at snow. While other children built forts and pelted snowballs at roosting crows, Willie was catching single snowflakes. Day after stormy day, he studied the icy crystals. Their intricate patterns were even more beautiful than he had imagined. He expected to find whole flakes that were the same, that were copies of each other, but he never did. Willie decided he must find a way to save snowflakes so others could see their wonderful designs. For 3 winters, he tried drawing snow crystals. They always melted before he could finish. When he was 16, Willie read of a camera with its own microscope. If I had that camera, I could photograph snowflakes, he told his mother. Willie's mother knew he would not be happy until he could share what he had seen. Fussing with snow is just foolishness, his father said. Still, he loved his son. When Willie was 17, his parents spent their savings and bought the camera. It was taller than a newborn calf and cost as much as his father's herd of 10 cows. Willie was sure it was the best of all cameras. Even so, his first pictures were failures, no better than shadows. Yet he would not quit. Mistake by mistake, snowflake by snowflake, Willie worked through every storm. Winter ended, the snow melted, and he had no good pictures. He waited for another season of snow. One day, in the second winter, he tried a new experiment, and it worked. Willie had figured out how to photograph snowflakes. Now everyone can see the great beauty in a tiny crystal, he said. But in those days, no one cared. Neighbors laughed at the idea of photographing snow. Snow in Vermont is as common as dirt, they said. We don't need pictures. Willie said the photographs would be his gift to the world. While other farmers sat by the fire or rode to town with horse and sleigh, Willie studied snowstorms. He stood at the shed door and held out a black tray to catch the flakes. When he found only jumbled broken crystals, he brushed the tray clean with a turkey feather and held it out again. He waited hours for just the right crystal and didn't notice the cold. If the shed were warm, the snow would melt. If he breathed on the black tray, the snow would melt. If he twitched a muscle as he held the snow crystal on the long wooden pick, the snowflake would break. He had to work fast or the snowflake would evaporate before he could slide it into place and take its picture. Some winters he was able to make only a few dozen good pictures. Some winters he made hundreds. Willie so loved the beauty of nature, he took pictures in all seasons. In the summer, his nieces and nephews rubbed coat hangers with sticky pitch from spruce trees. Then Willie could use them to pick up spider webs and jeweled with water drops and take their pictures. On fall nights, he would gently tie a grasshopper to a flower so he could find it in the morning and photograph the dew-covered insect. But his snow crystal pictures were always his favorites. He gave copies away or sold them for a few cents. He made special pictures as gifts for birthdays. He held evening slideshows on the lawns of his friends. Children and adults sat on the grass and watched while Willie projected his slides onto a sheet hung over a clothesline. He wrote about snow and published his pictures in magazines. He gave speeches about snow to faraway scholars and neighborhood sky watchers. You are doing great work, said a professor from Wisconsin. The little farmer came to be known as the world's expert on snow, the snowflake man. But he never grew rich. He spent every penny on his pictures. Willie said there were treasures in snow. I can't afford to miss a single snowstorm, he told a friend. I never know when I will find some wonderful prize. Other scientists raised money so Willie could gather his best photographs in a book. When he was 66 years old, Willie's book, His Gift to the World, was published. Still, he was not ready to quit. Less than a month after turning the first page on his book, Willie walked 6 miles home in a blizzard to make more pictures. He became ill with pneumonia after that walk and died 2 weeks later. A monument was built for Willie in the center of town. The girls and boys who had been his neighbors grew up and told their sons and daughters the story of the man who loved snow. 40 years after Wilson Bentley's death, children in his village worked to set up a museum in honor of the farmer scientist. And his book has taken the delicate snow crystals that once blew across Vermont, past mountains, over the earth. Neighbors and strangers have come to know the icy wonders that land on their own mittens, thanks to Snowflake Bentley.
Yay, Katie, that was great. Thank you. Every Sunday in our worship, we make space for a time of prayer and meditation and shared silence. Please now settle into your chair and breathe. For this prayer time today, first we'll share in our centering song, After that, we'll sit together in silence for a few moments. Then we'll share our joys and sorrows and a meditation. First, our centering song, which is based on our monthly theme. This month, our song is Find a Stillness. The words are by a UU minister, the melody from an old Transylvanian folk tune. Today, I've added new photos. Please enjoy these images of Wilson Snowflake Bentley and some of the thousands of images of snow that he took. Every Sunday, we share with one another the milestones of our lives, the joys and sorrows that mark our days, so that we might support one another better and grow closer as a community. If you have a sorrow to share with us today, please type it into the chat box now, and I will read them all aloud. From Florence, A candle of remembrance for my grandmother, Jean, who passed on Tuesday. She was a force and won't soon be forgotten. From Kathy, Tom K. will have knee replacement surgery on Friday. Let's all keep him in our thoughts. From Dan Franklin, a candle of concern for my friend Jerry, who is being treated for prostate cancer. From Nyla, a long distance but dear friend of my mom's named Les will have surgery tomorrow for an aneurysm. From Brian Johnson, a candle of remembrance for Sean Miller, a former teacher at Melrose High who died this week unexpectedly. From Karen, a candle of concern for my son Gabe and his partner Monica, who have COVID. From Jim Taza, just want to say thank you all for your prayers and support for my wife, who is in the hospital. She will be home tomorrow. From Paul and Michelle, a candle of remembrance for my mother Maria, who would have turned 100 years old this week. Let us hold all of these sorrows, all the ones that are spoken and unspoken, in our minds and hearts. May those who are worried or grieving know that we are with them, that we hold them in our care and in our love. I will now light one candle as a beacon of care for all the sorrows, spoken and unspoken. And now I ask for all the joys that you'd like to share, type them into the chat box and I will read them aloud. From Mary Beth Griscom, a candle of joy. One progeny is here and the other is coming, and they will be home for a month. And from Gail Maynard, a candle of celebration for 30 years of attending this church. From the Toshoni Noto family, candle of joy for Grammies and grandpas who deliver gingerbread cookies and candy when we can't gather in person for our annual family gingerbread day. From Don Sparks, joy at reconnecting with my music partner and working together. From Lillian Noto, a candle of joy for an online meeting with our cousins and grandparents today. Any other joys today? One last from Cheryl, a joy for watching Julia perform Friday night on Zoom. Thank you. By sharing these celebrations, you connect us to one another and to the joy of living. And we smile with you. Now I light one more candle to shine out our joy and our thanks for all the blessings shared here this morning.
Suzanne, there's one more
Oh, thank you very much.
from James.
Go ahead and read it.
From James, Candle of Joy for the Mandalorian.
This is little James, James Noto. Thank you. Candle of joy. And now a prayer for all of us to share together. This is more of a meditation. It is something different, a way of settling into more silence together. This is a body prayer from a UU named Annie Scott. She writes, "It is important to take time to be quiet, to be still, so that we can be in touch with the deepest and best parts of ourselves, our inner voice. That time is often called prayer or meditation. I invite you to join in a body prayer. I will show you the motions, and then I invite you to move through it with me once. Then we will do it with our bodies 3 times in silence. It goes like this. We begin with our hands in front of us in the prayer pose. To find our inner quiet, we raise our arms up high to open ourselves to the spirit of life, God of love. Then we bring our hands to our hearts to affirm the strength of our inner voice. We extend our hands in front of us to offer our kindness and respect to others. We lift up our hands in front of us to offer to others and to the world all that we have to give. Then we lift our hands over our heads, reaching out to the world and being open to all that it might offer us. We bring our hands down, gathering in all the gifts and bringing them to our heart. And returning to our stillness, we bring our hands together in the prayer pose. Okay, let's do it one more time together, and I'll walk us through it, and then we'll do it 3 times in silence. Hands out front in the prayer pose to find our inner quiet. Raise our arms up high to open ourselves to the spirit of life. Hands to our hearts to affirm the strength of our inner voice. Extend our hands in front of us to offer kindness and respect to others. Lift up our hands to offer to others and the world all that we have to give. Then high over our heads to reach out to the world and be open to all that it offers us. And then gather back in all those gifts into our hearts, bringing our hands together in the prayer pose. Okay, now we'll do it 3 times in silence. Thank you so much for trying that along with me. Now is the time for our offertory, the moment in our service when, if we were here, we would pass the plate. If you're moved by our worship this morning, I invite you to donate using the yellow button on the homepage at melroseuu.org. Our Giving Beyond Our Walls partner for this month is The Second Step, which serves Boston area families impacted by domestic violence. For our offertory music this morning, I've chosen a video from the UU musician Peter Mayer, composer of favorite hymns like Blue Boat Home. In this original song, Mayer speaks of watching a snowstorm out his kitchen window, how it reminds him of the connection between his own soul and the whole universe. Enjoy.
There are 100 billion snowflakes swirling in the cosmic storm, and each one is a galaxy, a billion stars or more, and each star is a million Earths, a giant fiery sun, high up in some
Fireplace, huh?
sky, maybe shining on someone. And deep inside a snowflake I am floating quietly. I am infinitesimal, impossible to see. Sitting in my tiny kitchen, in my tiny home, staring out my window at a universe of snow. But my soul is so much bigger than the very tiny me. Reaches out into the snowstorm like a net into the sea. Out to all the lovely places where my body cannot go. I touch that beauty and embrace it in the bosom of my soul. And so brief and fleeting is this tiny life of mine, like a single quarter note in the march of time. But my soul is like the music, it goes back to ancient days, back before it wore a human face, long before it bore my name. Because my soul is so much older than the evanescent me. It can describe the dawn of time like a childhood memory. It is a spark that was begotten of the darkness long ago. What my body has forgotten, I remember in my soul. This life together, my giant soul and tiny me, one resembling forever, one like smoke upon the breeze, one the deep abiding ocean, one a sudden flashing wave, and counting galaxies like snowflakes, I would swear we were the same. Oh, my soul belongs to beauty, takes me up to lofty heights, teaches sacred stories to me, sanctifies my tiny life, lays a bridge across the ages, melts the boundaries of my bones, paints a bold eternal face on this passing moment. Oh, my soul.
And now our readings for this morning. Josh, would you share those slides, please? Thank you. The first is from Viktor Frankl, the book Man's Search for Meaning. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And two more short readings this morning, both from the Bible. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a still small voice. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And from the Psalms, be still and know that I am God. Thank you, Josh. Last Sunday, we talked about the why of stillness, why it's so important to try every now and then to unplug from our devices and settle ourselves into the quiet. This Sunday, I want to add to that, to talk about why we might, what we might find in the stillness, what wisdom is waiting for us there to discover if we make the space. First, stories. Last week, I asked you for your stories about trying to find more time for stillness. And yesterday, I got this beautiful email from church member Liz Tishoni. Up until recently, I had fallen into some bad sleep habits, Liz wrote me. And she said I could use this in my sermon, by the way. I did ask her. She said, lots of mindless phone scrolling as I was trying to fall asleep. So in the last couple of weeks, I spent a couple nights listening to short meditations instead, and it became such a game changer for me and helped me get back on track with better sleeping. Isn't that great? Sleep is so important for our mental health, and we all know how screens can disrupt our sleep patterns. Liz added, I've also got a crystal that some folks believe helps promote restful sleep, and I keep it next to my bed. And when I find my mind starting to race before bed, I reach for that stone and I hold it in my hand and I try to get back into that place of meditation. So Liz is using that stone like we use the prayer today, just to get grounded in the body, to have a body sensation so that we can relax into the body and we can access stillness in a different way, not with our minds, but in our bodies. Stillness can help us sleep, help us relax. It can boost our physical and mental and emotional health in more ways than science even knows even yet. But in addition to all that, I'd say that arguably the most important benefit you get from learning stillness may be the one that's hardest to quantify, to record, or to study, but it's most likely the reason that you come to church, for guidance. No, not my guidance. No, don't be ridiculous. I know it's not my guidance that you're looking for. It's something else. The guidance that can come only from you, from deep, deep within you. It's that special, elusive something that we struggle to name, but some have called it the still small voice. Where does that phrase come from, the still small voice? Well, as we discovered together this morning, it comes from the Bible, from the book of Kings. Here, the prophet Elijah is running for his life, hiding in the desert from people who would murder him. God gives him food in the desert and leads him to travel on for 40 days to the holy mountain of Horeb, where Moses received the 10 Commandments centuries before. Elijah seeks out God there, and God shows himself or herself, but not in the ways that Elijah expects. God was not in the great wind or the earthquake or the fire, but then comes a still small voice with a question. What are you doing here? an interesting thing for God to say. What are you doing here? Today, in this season of Advent, in this time of darkness and waiting, of uncertainty, it's a perfect moment to pause, to enter into stillness and just allow the questions that come. What are we doing here? And allow the not knowing. Just sit for a while so that the answers, whatever answers are going to arise, come in their own time, at their own pace. What are you doing here? Viktor Frankl knew all about the power of stillness, about the value of pausing. In the 1920s and 30s, Frankl was already a well-known psychiatrist in Vienna. That was before he was sent to the concentration camps. After he survived the war, Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning, which became one of the most influential books of the 20th century. In every interaction, no matter the circumstances, Frankl argued in his book, there is always room to reflect, to connect with our principles, and to listen for wisdom. Between stimulus and response, Frankl wrote, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Learning to pause, to make that place, that space, to sit in stillness and wait for wisdom. That is the heart of any and all spiritual disciplines. And so I will be honest and admit that I am not great at meditating, or so I think or thought. I've tried for many, many years to empty my mind, quote unquote, and I found it just impossible. The thoughts just come too fast and I get carried away and I get angry with myself over it. So recently I've tried something else. I sit in silence and instead of emptying my mind, now I let the thoughts come as they like. I take it as a sign that my brain just needs that time to decompress and unwind. So I watch the thoughts come and go for a while, maybe half an hour, and eventually my mind calms down and comes to a rest. And I get a taste of stillness and silence and serenity. That moment, that stillness, that's the place that we are seeking this month, trying to describe, trying to celebrate all the ways that all of us come to find it. Some people call it the still small voice. Maybe you know it by a different name or in a different form. Sometimes that stillness doesn't speak, it doesn't have a voice. Sometimes the stillness is a wordless pause, a moment of rest that breathes new life into you. Sometimes in the silence, when you touch nothingness, that experience brings you insight about somethingness, and life feels precious again. Your spirit is reborn. Sometimes in that stillness, you sense once again your deep connection with all that is, and you feel like Peter Mayer in that song, that your soul is a single snowflake falling gently from the sky, tiny but connected with all that is and ever was. Sometimes in the stillness, you become suddenly newly conscious of all the beauty that surrounds you, like Snowflake Bentley, how he suddenly noticed all the beauty in the most common of things, snowflakes. And he longed to capture that beauty so he could help others to see it too. Sometimes the stillness gives you that passion that you have for your whole life. It tells you the meaning of your life here, what your purpose is. Sometimes in that stillness, something like a voice speaks. And suddenly you know something that was true and you never knew before. A path becomes clear, a way opens when there was none before. Sometimes you hear words. Have you ever heard that voice? What did it say to you? Some people get stuck on the question, whose voice is it? Is it my voice, my conscience, or is it something else, something outside of myself? And how will I know? To you in reply, to that person in reply, I have a question. How much does that answer really matter? Does it change how you live your life? In her email yesterday, Liz Tishoni shared with me a wonderful quote from the writer Glennon Doyle, who also struggles with how to describe the wisdom that she finds through meditation. It's just exactly what I wanted to say, so I share that with you now. Glennon Doyle writes, "What I've found in the deep is just myself. If I've found in the deep just myself, if what I've learned is not how to commune with God, but how to commune with myself, if who I have learned to trust is not God, but myself, and if for the rest of my life, no matter how lost I get, I know exactly where and how to find myself again, well then, that is certainly enough of a miracle for me." Doyle goes on, "I know many people who have found this level inside themselves and live solely by it. Some call it knowing God or wisdom or intuition or source of deepest self. It doesn't matter what we call our knowing. What matters, if we want to live our singular shooting star of a life, is that we call it." I couldn't agree more. This Sunday, as you are cornered by COVID and quarantined, yet still in your own small space, I pray for you to embrace this situation, to let yourself sit still and breathe and listen. Listen to all the thoughts as they come and go, and then listen for the stillness underneath that. Let it come to you on its own terms. Allow yourself to sit with the unknowing, the questions, the is of what is. Allow the silence to fall around you like snowflakes. Then, when it is ready, in its own time, let the knowing unfold. Let the wisdom sleeping within you gently wake. Let it tell you what you need to know. So may it be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is a favorite, "Voice Still and Small," sung by our choir. Take it away, choir.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all my years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain,
the words of John O'Donohue. All holiness is about learning to hear the voice of your own soul. It is always there, and the more deeply you learn to listen, the greater the surprises and discoveries that will unfold. Amen.